Hi everybody, it's May 4th, 2025, and this video is one of a series in my attempt to recover from the trauma of watching my little brother, Paul Cairns, 64, with Down syndrome, be locked up by the British Columbia New Democratic Party government with David Eby as a leader. So Paul was locked up when I reported a fraudulent and forged power of attorney to the Burnaby RCMP on August 26th of 2022, and he was locked away in his group home with no visitors. I was his last surviving family member and visitor in Greater Vancouver. So he was locked up in his L'Arche group home. That's L'Arche, when I reported L'Arche for creating a fraudulent and forged power of attorney to the Burnaby RCMP. The Burnaby RCMP officer that I spoke with said that she would get the original of the document with a search warrant, and that she would interview the witnesses who were low-level L'Arche caregivers. She never did either. She just tipped off the BC government and L'Arche that I had complained, and they terminated Paul's visits with me. So he was locked away for 588 days until he had a stroke on April 13th of 2024, and he died 10 days later. I believe that they did medical assistance in dying on him. He appeared to me, after he had the stroke, I was allowed to visit him in person for 10 minutes a day, and he appeared to me to be struggling to recover. When I said my name to him, he squeezed my hand so tight, like a steel vise. He grabbed a book from my hand and turned the pages perfectly. But when the government found out that the Burnaby RCMP had reopened the investigation into the fraudulent forged power of attorney, they withdrew his oxygen mask. He had an oxygen mask, and sedated him to death. He didn't need any sedation at all. He had some kind of brain incident, a brain bleed. He had a wound on the side of his head, so someone might have hit him or he might have fallen. But in any event, they sedated him. He didn't need a painkiller, or he didn't need sedation. And his little heart couldn't handle having the oxygen mask removed and being sedated. So he died on April 23rd of 2024, alone among strangers who couldn't understand his communication. And the evil nun from 4,000 kilometers away, whom the government had appointed as his guardian to give him the COVID-19 shot. Yeah, complete miscarriage of justice for Paul and for me. I'm also a disabled person. So I've been struggling to recover. I ran out of funds to pay for trauma counseling that was recommended by my family doctor. And I've been posting these videos. So today, I just came from Mass. I'm a Catholic, and I just went to Catholic Mass at our longtime family church, Our Lady of Fatima. And the priest said there's going to be a special Mass for in remembrance of the Lapu attack. And I thought, what the hell? There was a massacre of 11 Vancouver residents on April 26, 2025 at about 8:14 p.m. during a festival with mostly Filipino attendance. But it took place in my old neighborhood of Fraser Heights in Vancouver, near 41st and Fraser. The alleged assailant who was driving a car rammed it through the packed street, and it was actually the festival attendees ordinary citizens who grabbed the alleged assailant. and he was arrested by the police. And I believe that this is just a series of criminality in Canada that's arisen because of the Liberals' NDP's soft on crime approach, which is characterized by the Supreme Court of Canada's decision in Regina and Bissonnette, where Alexander Bissonnette, who had been given 6 life sentences, of which in Canada is only 25 years, he was given 6 life sentences for killing 6 worshippers in a mosque in Quebec. But the Supreme Court of Canada said that was cruel and unusual punishment and turned the consecutive life sentences into concurrent life sentences. And the worst serial and mass killers in Canada all had their consecutive life sentences turned into concurrent life sentences, which means they can get out in 25 years. Or less. And there's mandatory release laws in Canada, which means that they could get out in less, they could apply for parole in less than 25 years. I was a lawyer. I was a federal prosecutor for 3 years and then a family lawyer until 2014. I'm not a lawyer anymore. I'm not a practicing lawyer, and this isn't legal advice. But I believe that this man who allegedly killed in the most horrible, sadistic fashion you could imagine. Can you imagine being run over to death? And the only reason that he stopped was that his vehicle couldn't work any longer because it had crushed so many fragile little human bodies. It was the vehicle, the SUV, his SUV was so damaged by these fragile little human bodies that it couldn't run anymore. And this man, this alleged attacker, had been arrested and released by the Vancouver police more than 100 times. Canada's crime rate is now exceeding that of the United States. Violent crime has gone up 37%. And that was it should have been one of the most important. When I was door knocking on behalf of the Conservative Party of Canada, that was one of the issues that came up over and over again. Just within a block of here at the John B. pub, a man was murdered several months ago as he left my local pub, just a block and a half from where I'm sitting. And shortly after I had walked by. I've never lived in a neighborhood where anyone was murdered, to my knowledge, and I've lived in Ontario. I grew up in Ontario and Quebec, and I've lived in British Columbia since 1973. So what bothered me about what happened at Mass is that the priest said that there would be a memorial Mass for the in memory of those killed in the Lapu Lapu attack. And I thought, stop calling it the Lapu Lapu attack. It's a Vancouver attack. It had occurred in my first neighborhood in my city. I live in Greater Vancouver. I've lived in Greater Vancouver since 1973. So stop calling it the Lapu Lapu attack, because if you keep calling it, or the Filipino Lapu Lapu attack, if you keep calling that, then we're never going to get to the bottom of the criminality that's created by the Liberals and the NDP. This reminds me of the Air India flight in 1985. It was there was an Air India flight from Toronto to London, and there was a bomb on board that was placed there by separatists, Sikh separatists in Toronto, and 329 people were murdered in the Irish Sea, and of them 268 Canadians were killed. It's the largest terrorist attack in Canadian history. And I remember Brian Mulroney phoned the Prime Minister of India and gave his condolences when it was Canadians that were killed. by a Canadian issue, by Canadian criminality. So stop calling it the Lapu Lapu attack. It was the Vancouver Massacre in my city, in my beautiful city. And the residents, the attack occurred to the residents of my beautiful city. And it's the responsibility of my government and of the Canadian government and the soft on crime approach. So that's what is top of mind for me today. It's a beautiful day. May the 4th be with you. I love you all. Take care.